Joy Taylor with the Soul Inspired Life. This video is about how to facilitate Q&A in your online events. Whether it's a webinar or a meeting, there's different ways to really support people in having and knowing the right time to ask questions so that you can give them the answers they're looking for. So I will be talking about how to do this in a meeting, how to do this in a webinar, and I hope you find this information valuable. First thing I'll say is I like to have my questions and answers in specific times during my event. So some people prefer to have the questions streaming in on the chat throughout. Either way is fine, but set the parameters at the beginning so that your participants know. Let them know that you'll be cueing them when it's a good time to ask a question. If you're using chat, the chat feature, which is the button below and it comes up in a box, if you're using chat as the way that people ask questions, you can have them start every question with a cue. So cue and then write your question. And what this does is it distinguishes the questions from the random or the organized chat exercises that you lead. One thing that's nice about utilizing the chat for questions as opposed to inviting people to raise their hand and speak audibly is that people are more specific and poignant. It's faster. You can usually get through more questions when they're chatted. However, bringing people onto video view, which in a meeting is a snap, just have people, unmute themselves and make sure their video's on. In a webinar is also possible. You just have to look at your participant panel and upgrade them into the video view. But when you bring people into that environment, it's more personal. It takes more time. Sometimes people run on in their questions, which can be avoided if you set parameters, but might also need to be mitigated by just encouraging people to get to the point, get to the question. But the sharing on video view with the audio, of course, you know how that feels as a participant, as a presenter, and it's just a little more connected. And sometimes the people who are listening to the Q&A, they relate more because they feel it. So if you have time, if you have space, if it's relevant and applicable, go ahead and bring people on to video view as long as you give them clear parameters. If time is an issue, or especially in the webinar setting when you're giving people a lot of information, I recommend the chat button. And once again, have them put a cue and then their question. Give them parameters. Let them know if you're taking questions throughout the presentation or if you want them to hold the questions until the end. Another advanced pro tip: if you can afford it or you find someone who will help you, have a co-host. When I do big master classes and there's a lot of participants, I always have my co-host Margie with me because she can read the Q&A. And what that does is it takes me out of the technology management mindset and into the just zone of being a presenter and being one that can support others intuitively and with my expertise in getting the answers that will help them. So having a co-host also breaks up the energy. It's always good to hear other voices. So it's not just always you doing the talking, and a co-host asking the questions from the chat can really support that nuance as well as support you. So I hope you found this helpful. I encourage you to make sure you have time for Q&A throughout or specific times during or at the end of your presentations so that people can have their questions answered so that they can really dive into the material more fully with you. By the way, when you have lots of Q&A, guess what happens? You get better. You start to see trends. You refine your material. You understand where you explain things well, where you didn't, where you left gaps. You get the concerns of others. So I love, especially when I'm running programs the first and second time, to have a lot of Q&A. It helps me shape my programs so that I'm really giving people what makes sense, what they need. And our participants are the first to help us design and refine our programs. Q&A included in your programs Everyone will be grateful. Everyone learns. I hope you found this helpful.